The cave didn't even have a name, just a black mouth in the limestone, half hidden by the slope of the forest hill. We found it by accident. It was early November, cold enough that our breath fogged the air, the wind cutting through the trees in long, hollow notes. There were 4 of us: Tom, Leah, Brent, and me. We were supposed to be camping for the weekend, a quiet trip before winter. Then Tom saw the opening in the rocks about 20 minutes from camp and decided it'd be cool to check it out. Tom always went first. He was the one who climbed the ledges, who tested the thin ice, who leaned too far over railings just to prove he wasn't afraid. So when he crouched by that cave entrance, shining his flashlight into the dark, none of us stopped him. "It's bigger than it looks," he said, his voice echoing back in a strange, metallic way. The light vanished into blackness. He looked back at us and grinned. "Be right back." Then he ducked inside. We waited. The forest was so quiet you could hear the distant drip of water from somewhere inside the cave. 30 seconds passed, then a minute. Leah shifted uneasily. "Tom?" No answer. Brent cupped his hands and called out, "Yo! You find a bear in there or what?" Nothing. Just that slow drip. Drip. Drip of water. "Maybe he's just messing with us," I said, though my voice didn't sound convinced. Tom had done that before, like disappear just to make us nervous. But 5 minutes passed, then 10. That was when Leah said quietly, "His light's not moving anymore." We all turned. Sure enough, the faint glow from his flashlight beam, which had been bouncing off the cave walls, was fixed in one spot. Still. Unmoving. "All right, screw this," Brent muttered, grabbing his headlamp. "I'm going in." "Wait," I said, but he was already ducking through the narrow opening. Leah grabbed my arm. "Don't let him go alone." So we followed. Inside, the air was colder, heavy with moisture and the faint smell of rust and earth. The tunnel sloped downward sharply, the walls glistening under our lights. "Tom!" Brent's voice echoed, bouncing and distorting in strange ways. It came back to us, twisted, fragmented. "Tom." We walked for maybe 50 feet before the passage widened. The beam from Tom's flashlight lay ahead, half buried in mud, its light still faintly glowing. "Tom?" Leah's voice cracked. She rushed forward, slipped, caught herself on the slick rock. Brent picked up the flashlight, turning it over in his hand, still warm. That was the moment I noticed something odd. Boot prints. Tom's heading deeper into the cave, but only one set came back, halfway. Then they just stopped. "Brent," I said, shining my light down the tunnel. "Look." He crouched beside me, tracing the prints with his finger. He turned around here, started back, then nothing. Leah backed up. "We should leave, call someone." But Brent shook his head. "He's probably deeper in. Maybe he took a side passage." We pushed on. The tunnel grew narrower, forcing us to crouch. The walls closed in, brushing our shoulders. My breathing sounded too loud in my ears. After a while, we reached a fork. 2 paths, both descending into the dark. "Which way?" Leah asked. Brent knelt and shined his light on the floor. "Prints go left." We went left. The air grew colder still, almost metallic. There was a faint humming now, not mechanical, more like a vibration running through the rock. We found a torn piece of fabric snagged on a jagged stone, the cuff of Tom's jacket. Leah's hand flew to her mouth. Sound, fabric rip. "Tom!" I shouted again. My voice bounced off the walls. Louder, harsher, angrier. Nothing answered. We kept moving until the tunnel dropped into a chamber, wide, circular, with a shallow pool of water in the center. Our lights swept across the walls. They were covered in scratches, deep gouges in the limestone, some recent, some ancient. Brent crouched by the water's edge. "These look human." Leah backed away. "We're going." She turned to climb back up the slope, then froze. Her light hit something near the base of the wall, A boot. Tom's boot. But it wasn't empty. Leah screamed. Brent lunged forward, pulling her back as her light scattered across the floor. There were drag marks in the mud. Long, uneven grooves leading deeper into a low tunnel, barely big enough to crawl through. Brent stared at it, shaking. He got stuck or something. Maybe... No. My voice was shaking too. No one crawls in there. Leah grabbed my arm. We're leaving. Now. We turned to go. And that's when the humming grew louder. At first I thought it was the wind. Then the floor trembled. Cave in, Brent shouted. We scrambled toward the exit, but the tunnel we'd entered through was now collapsing. Sheets of dust and rock cascading down. When it stopped, the path behind us was gone. Jesus Christ, I whispered. We're trapped. The air grew heavier by the minute. We sat there, backs to the wall, our headlamps dimming. That's when Leah whispered, I hear something. I held my breath. At first, nothing. Then a sound, faint but distinct. A tap. Then another, like someone knocking softly against stone. It was coming from the low tunnel, the one with Tom's boot at its mouth. Brent crawled forward. The tapping stopped. Then came a scraping sound. Slow, deliberate, closer. Brent froze. Tom, if that's you, say something. Silence. Then the scraping started again. Faster now, like something dragging itself forward. Leah screamed. I grabbed her and yanked her back. Brent's light flickered, then went out. Darkness. Brent! I shouted. There was movement in the dark, scuffling, grunting, a muffled shout. Then nothing. Leah's sobs echoed in the stillness. Hours passed. The air was thin. My light was dying. Then suddenly, a voice. Weak, rasping. Help! It came from the tunnel. Leah looked at me, eyes wide. That's him! I didn't move. Something about it was wrong. Too calm, too close. Help! I can't move! Leah crawled forward, crying, her fingers brushing the rock. Then, the sound wasn't from her. It came from inside the tunnel. She screamed, scrambling back as something heavy shifted in the dark. I reached for her, but before I could grab her, the ceiling gave way. I woke up in daylight. Rescuers, flashlights, hands pulling me out. Leah was beside me, unconscious but breathing. Brent. They didn't find him. Or Tom. They told us the cave hadn't been explored in decades, and that the collapse had sealed off the lower tunnels permanently. No one would ever reach them again. But here's the part I can't explain. The part that keeps me awake. When they brought me my backpack from the debris, one of the rescue workers handed me something. It was my flashlight. Still on. Still working. And next to it, in the mud, they found another. A flashlight identical to mine. But it wasn't Tom's. It was labeled Brent. The timestamp on its body cam feed read 2 hours before we entered the cave. And it showed the 4 of us standing outside the entrance. Tom went in first, and none of us followed. We were supposed to be out of the cave by nightfall. That was the rule. In by noon, out before dark. Simple. But rules don't mean much when you've been underground for 6 hours, your lights flickering, your nerves shot. And every tunnel looks exactly the same. It was supposed to be a routine expedition, a hobbyist group of weekend explorers. There were 4 of us: Nate, Heather, Lucas, and me. We'd been exploring small cave systems around the state for months. Tight squeezes, narrow passages. Nothing extreme. But this one was different. The map was drawn decades ago, photocopied so many times the ink had turned gray. It wasn't official. No measurements, no safety notes, just a faded outline and a name. Hollow Creek System. When we got there, it didn't look like much. Just a slit in the rock near the tree line. Cold air breathing out of the darkness. Feels deeper than it looks, Nate said, crouching by the entrance. He always said things like that. Part observation, part thrill-seeking challenge. We checked our gear, headlamps, radios, glow sticks. Heather double-checked the rope. Lucas filmed a short clip for his channel. By the time we entered, the sun was already sinking. Inside, the air changed immediately. Damp, still, muffled. Every sound seemed to come back at you from 5 directions at once. The tunnels narrowed quickly, forcing us to crawl through limestone corridors barely wide enough for our shoulders. It was easy to lose a sense of direction. Every turn looked the same. Slick walls, jagged ceilings, the same dripping echo. After 3 hours, we reached a chamber big enough to stand in. Nate marked it with red chalk, our halfway point. "All right," Heather said, checking her watch. "We go back now." But Nate was staring at a crack in the far wall. "There's airflow," he said. "Another chamber, maybe." Heather sighed. "We said 4 hours max." "Just a quick look," he said, grinning. "Then we're done." So we followed him, because we always did. We crawled through the narrow gap one by one. The rocks scraped against our helmets, dust filling our mouths. On the other side was a corridor that wasn't on the map. It sloped downward, smooth and curved like it had been carved by hand. But there were no tool marks, no signs of anyone ever being here. Lucas shined his light ahead. "Looks like it loops back." We followed it for another 20 meters, until the air turned colder. The smell changed too, metallic, faintly sweet. That's when we found the helmet. It was lying half buried in the mud. Old rusted buckle, cracked visor. Heather picked it up. "No name tag, but this isn't ours." "Could have been a surveyor," Nate said, but his voice wasn't steady anymore. We looked around. There were drag marks on the floor, not footprints, just long, uneven grooves leading deeper into the dark. "Let's go back," Heather said. But when we turned, the tunnel behind us looked wrong. The entrance we'd crawled through wasn't there, just a blank wall of stone. Panic spread fast. Lucas ran his hands along the wall, searching for cracks, airflow, anything. "We came through here," he said, his voice rising. "Right here." But it was solid, smooth. "Maybe we took a wrong turn," Nate said, but even he didn't sound convinced. We decided to keep moving. If the tunnel looped, it had to reconnect somewhere. We walked for maybe half an hour before finding another chamber, larger this time. There was a rope tied to one of the stalagmites. Old, frayed, gray with dust. Heather crouched beside it. "People were here." Lucas pointed his light up the rope, tracing it toward the ceiling, where a narrow shaft climbed almost vertically into the darkness. "A way out, maybe." Nate tested the rope. "It's sturdy enough." He started climbing. Sound. Distant rock crumble. He'd made it about 10 feet when something snapped. And he fell, slamming hard into the ground. He groaned, clutching his arm. "I'm fine, just twisted it." We gathered around him. That's when I noticed the walls. They were covered in scratches. Not random, deliberate. Numbers, dates. Some were crossed out. "Guys," Heather whispered, tracing the carvings. "These go back years." We set up the lantern and sat in silence. Nate's arm was swelling. Lucas checked his radio, but all we got was static. Heather finally stood. "We have to move. There has to be another exit." We packed up, grabbed what we could carry, and started searching the chamber's edges. That's when Lucas found it. A narrow opening behind a curtain of rock. It looked fresh. "There's airflow again," he said. "That's good." We squeezed through, one by one. The passage beyond was low, forcing us to crawl on hands and knees. The floor sloped upward. Hope flickered for the first time in hours. Then my light hit something. A boot, caked in mud, and next to it, another rope, a newer one. Heather picked it up. This looks like ours." She was right. Same brand, same color. But the end was frayed, cut clean halfway through. Nate stared at it, his face pale. "That's impossible." The passage climbed for another 20 feet before splitting again. Left or right? We chose right. It led us into a chamber we didn't recognize. Smaller, colder. Then I saw something painted on the wall in red chalk. Our mark. The same one Nate had drawn hours ago. But it wasn't possible. The angle, the turns. We hadn't gone in circles. We'd been moving upward. Lucas dropped his bag. We're back where we started. This doesn't make sense. Heather started laughing, shaking her head. No, we didn't come this way. Nate shined his light down another tunnel, his voice trembling. Then, what's that? It was another passage. Low, dark, barely visible behind the rocks. None of us had seen it before. We didn't miss that, I said. That wasn't there before. Nate looked back at us. We're getting out. I'm not staying here another hour. He went in first. We waited, lights trained on the narrow gap. His boots disappeared into the dark. Then, silence. Nate? Heather called. No answer. She crawled forward, shining her light in. I can't see him. Sound. Echoing shout. The sound came from deep inside the tunnel. One sharp, panicked yell, then a muffled thud. Jesus Christ! Lucas shouted. Nate! He started in after him, but I grabbed his pack. Wait! Listen! There was breathing, slow, shaky, not Nate's. Heather's voice was trembling. There's someone else in there. Lucas turned his light off. The chamber went black. We held our breath. The breathing stopped. Then came a whisper. Go back. We ran. Didn't think, didn't talk, just ran. The tunnels blurred together, left, right, up, down, until finally, there it was. A faint glow. Daylight. We stumbled toward it, crawling out into cold, open air. Heather collapsed, sobbing. Lucas dropped his camera. We sat there, gasping, covered in mud. When the rescue team arrived hours later, we told them everything. About Nate. About the extra passage. They listened, nodding, then told us something that made my stomach twist. They'd already mapped this section. There was no secondary passage, and no sign of Nate inside. But when they reviewed Lucas's footage later that week, the final frame showed something none of us could explain. As we crawled out of the cave, a shape moved behind us. Crouched still, just beyond the light. And when the camera panned, it revealed the mouth of the tunnel we came through. It wasn't the same one we'd entered.